My mom posted a family photo on Mother's Day, captioned, "My three children. I am the fourth." I did not comment. I simply updated the $1,400 monthly transfer she'd been receiving for 2 years and never mentioned. She noticed on the 8th. She texted, "Did you forget something?" I sent her the post. She replied, "That was a mistake." I replied, "So was the transfer." 61 missed calls. My name is Jeremiah. I'm 34 years old. And I'm the executive chef at a restaurant that has a 6-week wait list and a Michelin recommendation that I've printed out and framed in my kitchen. Not for vanity, but because there were years I wasn't sure I'd make it to 30, let alone to that. I need to tell you about the Mother's Day that finally answered a question I've been asking myself my entire life. The question was, am I actually part of this family, or have I just been funding it? The answer arrived at 9:47 a.m. on a Sunday in May, in the form of a Facebook post with 14 heart react emojis. But let me back up. Let me give you the full picture, because without the context, you'll think this is a story about a photo. It isn't. It's a story about a red car and what a woman's response to a gift tells you about how she sees you. I grew up in a medium-sized Midwestern city where everyone knows your business, and doing well means buying a house on the better side of the same zip code. My mother is Lorraine. My father, Gerald, communicated primarily through the remote control. They had 4 children. I was the fourth. Bowen, 41, is the firstborn son, the one my mother calls my Bowen, whose college letter got framed, whose kids are the grandchildren, even in years when other grandchildren existed. He has never, to my knowledge, transferred a single dollar to her account. He is still her favorite. I note this without bitterness. I've had a lot of therapy. Elise, 38, is the family's main character. Loud, funny, twice married. My mother's best friend in the way people who argue constantly sometimes are. She never picks up the check. Caden, 36, is the lovable disaster, perpetually between jobs, between rent payments, briefly the subject of a family intervention my mother called a rough patch. He gives excellent hugs. This is apparently sufficient. And then there's me, Jeremiah, the fourth, the quiet one who moved 3 states away, mailed birthday cards, showed up when he said he would, and built a career slowly. Sous chef at 30, executive chef at 33. My apartment has a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf mixing cookbooks with novels. My cat, Colonel, is gray and unimpressed. My best friend, Riggins, showed up with a mop at 2 a.m. after a kitchen fire and asked nothing. For 2 years, I'd been quietly sending my mother $1,400 a month. 2 years, $33,600. For the record, the Mother's Day car story requires some setup, because otherwise it sounds like I bought a bad car. I did not buy a bad car. My mother had been without reliable transportation for about 8 months. Her previous car had died in a way that was both gradual and complete, the way some relationships end. She'd been getting rides from Elise, which Elise reported to the family group chat as a significant personal sacrifice approximately once per week. I had been thinking about what to get my mother for Mother's Day, and I had decided, with genuine enthusiasm, the kind that hits you in the chest when you know you've thought of something good, to buy her a car, not a junker. A 2023 Volkswagen Tiguan, cherry red, with heated seats, Apple CarPlay, a backup camera, and a moonroof. I had done research. I had called dealerships. I had driven to the lot myself, test-driven the thing, verified the safety ratings, handled the paperwork, arranged for it to be delivered with a bow. A literal bow. I'd asked them to put a bow on it. I am not ashamed of the bow. The car cost me $31,000. I paid it in full. Mother's Day morning, the car was delivered to her driveway at 10 o'clock. I was 3 states away and on a video call with Riggins when she first saw it. She stepped out of the front door in her robe and looked at the car, and I could see her face, and I held my breath. She said, "It's red." I said, "Yes, you mentioned you liked red." She said, "It's a Volkswagen." I said, "It's a Tiguan. It's a great car, Mom. Excellent safety ratings. Really well reviewed." She said, "Jeremiah, this isn't a luxury vehicle." There was a pause. I want you to really sit with that pause. $31,000, bow included. She said, I appreciate the gesture. I do. But this is a starter car. Your brother's wife drives a Lexus. This is going to look, I just think it says something, about the investment. You could take a loan, get something from the current model year, something from a proper brand. I don't want you to get me something that's, below what I'm worth, below what she was worth. I was standing in my apartment with my phone getting warm in my hand, and I looked at Colonel, who was sitting on the kitchen counter, giving me the flat stare he reserves for moments when he finds me disappointing. And I thought, okay, let me file that away. I said very calmly, I'm glad it arrived safely, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. She said, your brothers didn't get me anything, but they have families to worry about. You understand. I said, I do. Enjoy the car. Bowen had gotten her nothing. Elise had gotten her a spa gift card worth $40. Caden had texted, Happy Mother's Day, love you, with a flower emoji. These are facts. I hung up. I sat on my kitchen floor for a few minutes. Colonel came and stepped directly on my leg, which is his version of comfort. I scratched behind his ears, and I thought about something Dr. Adler had said once. The problem isn't that she doesn't appreciate you. The problem is that she doesn't see you. Those are different things, and only one of them can be fixed. I told myself I was fine. I filed it under things I will process later, and I went back to work. The Mother's Day post went up at 9:47 a.m. on the second Sunday in May, the following year. I know the time because I was in the restaurant. Doing Sunday brunch prep, we start early. The prep for a good brunch service starts at 6. And one of my line cooks, a 22-year-old named Mira, who follows my mother on Facebook for reasons I have never fully understood, looked up from her phone with an expression I didn't immediately clock and said, Chef, did you know you have a brother? I thought she meant a new development. I said, I have 3. She turned her phone around. The photo was from Easter. I had not been there. I was working. I'm always working on holidays. The restaurant runs on my presence in a way that I'm both proud of and slightly exhausted by. But Bowen had been there, and Elise and Caden, and my mother was in the center of them in a floral blouse, and she was smiling the way she smiles when someone is taking her photo. Big, staged, satisfied. The caption read, My 3 children and my beautiful grandchildren. So grateful for these people every single day. Happy Mother's Day to all the mamas out there. 14 heart emojis in the comments. 47 likes. Elise had commented, Love you, mama. Bowen had commented, heart emoji. Caden had commented, Best mom ever. Various aunts and family friends had commented warmly. I stared at it for a long time. 3 children. I am the 4th. Here's what I want you to understand. I had been at Easter the year before. I had driven 6 hours round trip, arrived with food I had made from scratch. A full lamb dish, a tart, fresh bread, and I had eaten dinner at that table and helped with dishes, and driven home at 10 p.m. I was there. I have been there, consistently, at more family events than any of my siblings, because I am the one who shows up. I have been there while being the invisible one, which is a particular kind of exhaustion that I think only people who have lived it truly understand. You can be physically present and completely uncounted at the same time. The photo just made it official. I put Mira's phone down. I said, Thank you for telling me. She looked at me like she wasn't sure whether to apologize or not. I told her to start on the hollandaise, and I went into my office, and I sat at my desk, and I opened my banking app. I looked at the recurring transfer, $1,400.00 monthly. Lorraine Whitfield. I had been setting up the next payment. I looked at that line for a long time, and then very quietly, I clicked Cancel Transfer. No dramatic announcement. No explanation. I closed the app, I went back out to the kitchen, and I made the best brunch service we'd had in months. And I felt, strangely, lighter. She noticed, on the 8th, the text came in at 11:23 a.m. Jeremiah, did you forget something this month? The smiling face emoji is what got me. The little smiling face. The assumption so total, so breezy, that the question was merely logistical. A forgotten task, an oversight to be corrected. 2 years of $1,400 a month and not a single direct acknowledgement, And now, the smiling face. I opened Facebook. I found the Mother's Day post. I screenshot it. I sent it to her with no caption. There was a pause of about 4 minutes. She replied, "That was a mistake. I meant to say 4. Autocorrect. You know how it is." I want to note the caption was 43 words long. Autocorrect does not write 43 words. I replied, "So was the transfer." I put my phone face down on the counter, and I watched Colonel walk across the kitchen. And I waited. The calls started 11 minutes later. I did not pick up. By the end of the day, 61 missed calls, 14 voicemails, a string of texts that moved through stages I have come to think of as the Lorraine grief cycle. Stage 1, confusion. Jeremiah, what is happening? Call me. Stage 2, justification. I raised 4 children alone for years. I think I deserve some support from my family. Stage 3, guilt. I thought you were different from your siblings. I thought you understood what I went through. Stage 4, recruitment. Bowen texted, "Hey man, Mom is pretty upset. Can you just call her?" Elise called once and left a voicemail that started, "I'm not taking sides, but," and I deleted it there. Stage 5, the pivot to injury. "You've really hurt me with this, Jeremiah. I hope you're happy." I was not happy. I also was not answering. Here's what nobody in my family knew. My restaurant had just been awarded a spot on a regional Best New Fine Dining list. My boss, technically my business partner now, since I'd bought in as a minority owner 8 months prior, is a woman named Panilla, who is 62 and has the energy of a much younger person and a habit of expressing pride in ways that feel almost aggressive in their specificity. When the list came out, she came into my kitchen, set a printed copy of the article on my prep station, and said, "You did this. I want you to understand that I mean that literally. The review specifically names your lamb. The lamb is yours. This restaurant's reputation is currently sitting on your hands. You should be proud of your hands." I am not a person who cries easily. I have a high threshold, built over many years of practice. But I stepped into the walk-in cooler for about 90 seconds after she said that, ostensibly to check on the stock, and I stood in the cold, and I thought about how long it had been since someone had looked directly at me and said, "You did this without a qualifier or a pivot or a follow-up ask." 90 seconds. Then I went back out. Dr. Adler's office has a specific quality of afternoon light that comes through the blinds in a way that always makes me feel like I'm in a film about a person working something out. I had started seeing him at 31, initially for what I called stress management and what he eventually named as chronic hypervigilance, developed as an adaptive response to emotional inconsistency in early attachment figures, which is therapist for you grew up never knowing which version of your family you were going to get. So your nervous system never fully stopped scanning for danger. I told him about the transfer, the post, the 61 calls. He removed his glasses slowly. The clock ticked. He said, "What are you feeling right now telling me this?" I said, "Honestly, clear. I feel clear." He said, "That's interesting." Not angry. I said, "Not really. Maybe underneath. But mostly I feel like I just understood a long time ago." He put his glasses back on. He said, "You've spent years trying to earn visibility through provision. As if the right amount of money, the right car, the right gesture would eventually flip a switch and make you countable. The post didn't hurt you because it was cruel. It hurt you because it made undeniable what you'd always suspected. The switch isn't there. It was never there. I sat with that." He said, "The transfer wasn't love. It was an audition, and you've decided to stop auditioning." That's the one that got me. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet. The way something settles when the truth of it finally aligns with what you already knew. Riggins came over the night after the 61st missed call. He brought a 6-pack and a bag of chips that was, by volume, mostly air, and he sat on my couch and said, "So you really just canceled the transfer and sent her the post? Like that was it? No speech?" I said, "No speech." He cracked a beer and handed it to me and said, "That's the most you thing I've ever heard." And then he turned on a basketball game and we sat there and it was exactly what I needed. And he knew that without asking. I also need to tell you about a woman named Naomi who I had been seeing for about 7 months at this point. Naomi is a landscape architect who talks about soil composition with the same intensity I bring to a sauce reduction, which is to say, absolute, focused reverence. She had known about the family situation in outline form. She'd met my mother once, at a dinner I'd cooked, and had pulled me aside afterward and said very quietly, "Your mother told me that cooking was a nice hobby, but it was a shame you hadn't gone into something more serious." I didn't say anything because I wasn't sure if you'd want me to. I'm telling you now because you deserve to know what was said in your own home. That was the moment I knew Naomi was someone I wanted to keep. When the 61 calls happened, she didn't tell me what to do. She made dinner at my place that night. Nothing elaborate, pasta and a salad. Candles, because she likes candles. And we ate at my kitchen table, and she said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Better than I expected." And she said, "Good." And she meant it, and that was enough. 6 weeks after the photo, Bowen called, not on behalf of my mother, he said, though the call was clearly on behalf of my mother, to let me know that she was really struggling with the end of the transfer, and that as the sibling who did the best financially, perhaps I could reconsider. He framed it as a family responsibility. He used the phrase, "We all have to chip in," despite not having chipped in, to my knowledge, at any point in recorded history. I said, "Bowen, what do you contribute monthly to mom's expenses?" There was a pause. He said, "That's not really." I said, "I contributed $1,400 a month for 24 months. That's $33,600. I also bought her a car that she told me was below her standards. I'm not asking you to match it. I'm asking you to tell me what your contribution has been so I understand what chip in means in this context." Another pause. Longer. He said, "She needs help, Jeremiah." I said, "She has 3 children, apparently. Good luck." I hung up. The confrontation happened 6 weeks after that. Not in person. I'm 3 states away and I was not making a 12-hour round trip for this, but on a video call that I had scheduled deliberately because I wanted it to be a choice I made, not a reaction. I had notes, actual notes, dates, amounts, specific conversations, the car, the Mother's Day post, 2 years of transfers, specific quotes I'd written down over time, things she'd said that I'd filed away. Your brothers have families, Jeremiah. This isn't a luxury vehicle. I don't want you to get me something below what I'm worth. I raised you better than this. I thought you were different. My mother's face on the screen was carefully arranged into wounded dignity, which is her best look. Elise was there because my mother had asked her to be there for support, which I had expected. Bowen was not there, which I had also expected. I said, "I want to talk about some specific things. I'm going to be straightforward, and I'd like you to let me finish." My mother said, "Jeremiah, I think before we..." I said, "Mom, please let me finish." She pressed her lips together. Elise looked at something off screen. I said, "For 2 years, I sent $1,400 a month to your account. You never mentioned it to anyone, which tells me you understood it was a private arrangement. That's $33,600. On Mother's Day last year, I gave you a 2023 Volkswagen Tiguan, a car I paid $31,000 for, in full, no loan, because I wanted you to have reliable transportation. You told me it wasn't a luxury vehicle. You told me to take a loan and get something better. You then told me that my brothers hadn't gotten you anything because they have families. And I understood that meant I didn't. That's the last thing you said to me that felt true." My mother opened her mouth. I kept going. "On Mother's Day this year, you posted a photo of your 3 children. I am the 4th. I've been to more family events than any of my siblings in the last 5 years. I helped you move furniture twice. I called every Sunday for 3 years before I stopped calling because I realized you didn't notice the gap. The month I stopped calling, do you know how long it took for someone to reach out? 39 days. The call was about your gutters." Elise made a sound. I couldn't tell if it was agreement or discomfort. My mother said, very quietly, "That photo was a mistake." I said, "Mom, I believe that you believe that, but a caption is 43 words, and you wrote all of them. You said my 3 children, because that's how many children you keep count of on days that feel good. I'm the one you count when you need something. I've known that for a long time. I'm saying it out loud now because I've decided I'm done pretending I don't know it. She cried. I want to be honest. I found it hard to watch. She is still my mother. The thing about this kind of clarity is that it doesn't stop anything from hurting. It just stops you from lying to yourself about what's happening. She said, I never meant to make you feel left out. I said, I know. That almost makes it worse. Elise, to her credit, said, Jeremiah, I didn't know about the transfer. I didn't know about the car thing, like the full version. I'm sorry. She said it quietly, and she looked like she meant it. I believe she did. Elise is not a bad person. She is a person who never looked carefully at the shape of things, because she was too busy being inside them. My mother did not apologize. Not fully. She said variations of, I'm sorry you feel that way, and I never intended, and you were always so independent, I assumed you were fine. That last one I wrote down afterward. You were always so independent. As if my self-sufficiency was a reason to stop attending to me, rather than evidence that I had learned to survive without being attended to. As if coping mechanisms are the same as not needing. I said, I'm going to go now. I'm not ending the relationship. I'm changing what I participate in. I won't be funding things anymore. I will show up when I choose to, and I will not show up when I don't. I'd like it if you call them my birthday this year. That's all I'm asking. She said, Of course I'll call on your birthday. My birthday is November 14th. She called on November 19th. She said she'd been confused about the date. I thanked her, and I meant it, genuinely, because it was the closest she had come to showing up on purpose. 6 months later. Here's what's true. Bowen has not spoken to me since the call with the gutters. He has sent one text which said, I think you handled things badly with Mom. I replied, I understand, and I did not explain myself further. We are, I think, on a long pause that may become permanent. I don't experience this as a loss, exactly. More like the acknowledgement of something that had always been true. Elise texted me a week after the video call. She said, For what it's worth, I'm going to try to do better. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I mean it. I said, I believe you, and I do, with the caveat that meaning it and doing it are different skills, and she's still developing the second one. We have texted occasionally since then. It is, incrementally, something. Caden sent me a voice memo. This is very Caden. That was 4 minutes long, and mostly him processing his own feelings about our family dynamic, which is a thing he apparently has. And toward the end of it, he said, I know I've never been the most reliable brother, and I know I never noticed how much you were doing. And I'm sorry, man. I really am. It was the best apology I received from anyone in my family. It was also the least expected one. Caden contains multitudes. My mother and I speak approximately twice a month. The conversations are careful and not unkind. She has not mentioned the transfer. She has not mentioned the car. She asked about the restaurant once, and I told her about the list, and she said, Oh, how wonderful. And I could hear that she meant it, partially. In the way you mean things, when you're catching up to information you should have been tracking all along. What I know now, at 34, standing in a kitchen that is mine in a way I worked very hard for, is this. Visibility is not something that can be purchased. I know that because I tried. I tried with money and presence and food and time and a $31,000 red Volkswagen with a bow on it, and none of it moved the needle on whether I was counted. What moved the needle was stopping. The moment I stopped offering proof, I stopped waiting for the verdict, and the moment I stopped waiting, I had all this energy suddenly available for other things. For Naomi, who asked me last Tuesday what I was thinking about, and actually waited for the answer. For Riggins, whose laugh I have decided is one of my favorite sounds. For Colonel, who has recently decided that sleeping on my feet is acceptable, which I'm told is a sign of trust in cats, though I cannot verify this. For Pernilla, who left a review printout on my desk last week with a post-it note that said, Only, still yours. My name is Jeremiah. I am 34 years old. I am the executive chef at a restaurant that exists in part because I refused to accept that the kitchens I wanted were not for someone like me. I spent a long time in a family that was also that kitchen. a place I kept trying to enter through the right door. It turns out there was no right door. There was just a family with 3 children and a fourth one who eventually learned that the difference between provision and belonging is one of them can be canceled with a single click. The 61st call went to voicemail. I never listened to it. Some things you don't need to hear twice to understand.